Hello there, this is Flora Brown, and it is my pleasure today to welcome Cheryl Svensson, who is going to be sharing with us the history of guided autobiography and also sharing how she got involved with it over the years. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hi, Flora. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. That
Great.
sounds so boring, the history of guided autobiography.
Okay,
Let me,
but we're going to
let
make
me,
it exciting.
let me see if I can make it interesting for everybody.
Okay.
It is interesting, actually. It starts with Dr. James E. Beeren. And Jim Beeren, you need to know first and foremost that he is a pioneer in aging. He started the very first Master of Science gerontology program in the nation at USC in 1975. And he is the founding dean of the first school of gerontology at USC.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes back, his connection with aging goes back that he attended the very first Gerontological Society of America meeting in 1948.
Wow.
So they really call him an icon in the field of aging. And when I told him that, he says, well, as long as they don't call me a relic. And and he lived to be just 2 months short of 98 years.
Wow.
But that's his history. So he started out, he's a psychologist. He started out as a learning specialist. So he was studying the conduction velocity on the sciatic nerve of rats in relationship to age. So as these rats got older, did their conduction velocity on these nerves diminish? So that's what he was interested in. And when he moved from the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C. to USC in 1965, and then he proceeded to go into setting up this gerontology center, he had a sabbatical in the early 70s at the University of Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And at the sabbatical, he was teaching a psychology of aging class every day. And in the class, they had 4 credit students who were there because they had to be there to get the credit. And with that, they had an extension program. So they had older adults who joined the class. So the class was really literally intergenerational. It ranged in age from 20s up to 70s and 80s.
Okay.
And one day he was teaching the class and it was just flat. Nobody was responding. Everybody was lethargic. They were just sitting there, probably dreaming about going surfing or getting out of that classroom, whatever it was. So he threw up his hands in frustration. He said, okay, everybody, go home. I want you to write 2 pages about a branching point in your life. A road you took versus a road you didn't take. It could be a choice or it could have happened by chance. Whatever it is, write 2 pages about it. Bring it back tomorrow and be prepared to read it in class. Okay. So everybody left, he said, okay, go. They all left. They came back the next day. They read these stories in class and all of a sudden the whole class came alive.
Wow.
It was like somebody had lit a fire under them. They were saying, oh, you were born in Chicago? I was born in Chicago. Oh, you have a twin? I have a twin. So all of a sudden, even the differences in ages, the differences of people who didn't know one another, once they got a little taste of these stories, they connected with one another. So Jim Beeren finished teaching the class and realized that he'd hit on something that he had never been aware of. Now remember, he's a scientific researcher. He's interested in learning and memory and the conduction velocity on the sciatic nerve of rats. He went back to USC, where he was the dean, and he gathered around him, graduate students, and said, okay, Jeff, you go and research the history of autobiography. And Martha, you go and look at journal writing, and somebody else look at small group process. And from that, he put together his first syllabus for what they called guided autobiography.
Okay.
Because he realized that he wanted to have a facilitator there. So it was a guided experience. And also that it was going to be built on a small group process.
Yes.
So they put this together and they offered the first class. I just now found out for myself in 1975 at the USC Summer Institute, which was a 2-week institute. They met every day, 5 days a week for 3 hours a day.
Okay.
And they tested this out. And that was the beginnings. And Jim Beeren was hooked on it. He's written 3 books on the topic.
Yeah.
The first book came out in 1991. He's written 3 books. He has, there's been numerous research articles conducted on it. It changed his life.
Wow.
Now, this was back in the 70s. He retired from USC, or they retired him actually in 1983
Mm-hmm.
because they, quote, thought he was getting old, I guess, or maybe they figured deans have a lifespan. So Jim, in his own individual, unique way, left USC and went over to UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
where he was then director of the Center on Aging for
Mm-hmm.
UCLA. And I re-met him. I was actually in the very first, I graduated in that first Master of Gerontology program in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew Jim Barron because he was a dean, but I didn't know him. I knew of him. I met, the most time I ever spent one-on-one is when I went in and asked for a letter of recommendation to get into a PhD program.
Mm-hmm.
So I reconnected with him back probably about 1991 when he was living in the Palisades.
Mm-hmm.
And he was offering a class at UCLA on guided autobiography, because at that time they were writing the book that we call, the Barron Bible, which of course I don't see it here right now. Here I do. I have it. We call this book the Barron Bible.
Right.
Telling the stories of life through autobiography groups, guided autobiography groups. And he used the class as kind of a testing ground. We gave him ideas about new themes. We gave him ideas about what we could do. And so I got started with him and I got hooked, and everybody else was in the class, had a paying job. And I had a job that was winding down. So I was the only one that had free time that I could say, okay, Jim, I'm hooked on guided autobiography, just as he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stuck with him and stayed with him and worked with him until he died in January 1996. And he was 97, almost
January 2016.
Yeah, 2016. What did I say?
96.
Yeah, no, not he.
Remember.
He was 97, and it was in 2016 January.
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah. And he continued to teach guided autobiography at the facility where he was living, which was a continuing care retirement community.
Wow.
Up until maybe the last year before he died. So it was a passion with him, and his goal then was to launch it. He always wanted to spread the word about guided autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've attempted to do.
And you certainly have done that. How many years have you been training facilitators?
I started in 2009. So now it's been, 8 years. Did I do my math right on that one? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Years. So before that, you were offering your own workshops before you started training?
I did. Yes, I did in-person workshops.
Okay. Yes.
I'd never thought about doing online training.
Okay.
It was my colleague who said, what about online? I go, well, if I could meet you and, sit across the table, I'd prefer that. But, I've been blessed. I have a student now in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. I have a student in Hawaii. I mean, there's no way you could gather people together as you can in online. So it's been a gift.
That is fantastic. And I do think that for the training facilitators, that the online environment is perfect, because there are many people who want to take the workshops for themselves, but there's a smaller group of people who want to become facilitators, and they're scattered all over the world. And these days, to be able to meet the need of a global economy, I think online is just perfect. What do you see as the future for guided autobiography, as now it's part of a life story movement, a memoir movement, that people are getting more and more interested in telling their stories, writing them down, videotaping them, recording. Where do you see guided autobiography in this picture, and what is the future you think, or you would like to see as a future?
Jim Barron, he was a very wise man. I mean, you couldn't help but live that long and not be wise. But he always said that he learned more from listening to stories than he did from any of his education. Mm-hmm. But one thing that he did was he called the age we're living in the impersonal age, where because of technology, you don't have to interact with anybody, really. I mean, you can do it. You can do your banking online. You can do you can send packages overseas online. I don't even need to go to the post office. If you go to the supermarket, you can check out, self-check, and you don't have to talk to anybody.
That's right.
But because of that, people realize that they're missing out on these connections.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, everybody wants to write their story because they want to be remembered as something more than this photo stuck away in a box,
Mm-hmm.
with a name on the back of it,
Right.
or in the digital age with a date, scribbled, and a location scribbled on the tag to the digital photo. So people are more interested in writing their stories. That's why we have this increased interest.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, guided autobiography fills a need in two ways, not only to get the story written,
Mm-hmm.
but to get the story written on a personal level. It's not, there was an organization that unfortunately closed, less than a year ago, called the Association of Personal Historians.
Yes.
Personal historians went out and collected stories individually. So I would go visit Flora and have her tell me her story, and I'd record it. If I'm the personal historian, I'd go back, I'd transcribe it,
Mm-hmm.
I'd add the photos, put it all together and make it into a book and give it to Flora. And then
Mm-hmm.
she would give it to her family, friends, whatever. That's getting the stories from the outside in,
Right.
because you are the interviewer, and there's always going to be a bit of an interface there. Flora knows me pretty well, but most people, if you were the personal historian coming in, wouldn't know you.
Right.
So you get the story that they want to tell, and it may be the stories they've always told.
Mm-hmm.
Guided autobiography, when you start writing on the themes and you go through the questions, one of those questions will resonate with you. And you may start writing and think, okay, I'm writing about family. I'm going to write about my mother. And you write, and you struggle, and you start, and you tear it up, and you write, and you tear it up, and you finally, the night before the class, you go, wow, it's really my brother that I need to write about. He's been the one that was, that's really been the
Yes.
trigger point for me. And so then you write about that. You wouldn't have found that story if you'd been telling it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You only discover it for yourself. So the guided autobiography gives you the self-discovered stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that they are the small group, then you see yourself as other people see you.
Mm-hmm.
You learn about yourself not only through your own writing, but through the comments that the class gives to you.
Yeah. As a guided autobiography facilitator, I think the real magic is when you share the story to see the reaction of and hear the comments from the group.
Right.
Too many, as Jim Buren said, we're in an impersonal age, and even though we do a lot of texting and interacting on the surface,
Right.
we really don't sit and get to know somebody and have a moment to empathize with them and understand where they've been and what they've been through. So watching how people interact when they discover the reaction of other people to their stories. And it's even in the short, intensive ones, there's such a bonding that
Oh,
takes
yeah.
place. It's a magical thing. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it. But I think that's the big difference in memoir writing and personal historian work and the other kinds of work, ghost writing, those things.
Yeah.
The guided autobiography definitely is unique and fills a need that I don't think any of the other programs fill.
Right. No, and so to answer your question, really, which I didn't, where do I see it going?
Mm-hmm.
I would just continue to see it spreading,
Mm-hmm.
just as Jim Buren wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, through the facilitators now, training other facilitators like you
Yes.
to go out and to teach, GAB instructors to be, to go out. It's just going to keep multiplying.
Yes. Yes.
I see it as it's an excellent program.
Well, I want to thank you for making time to share this with us because there's no comparison to getting the story from the source like what we've done here. As you know, I've retold this story and this history to some extent, but not as well as you've done today.
Just don't make the mistake like I did. I was at giving a workshop with Jim Buren. And, he was there and I was there. And so I was putting it out to the students. Well, you can ask him any question you want. You can get it from the, the horse's mouth. And it popped out like that. And Jim turned around and he says, well, at least it's not from the other end.
Well, you notice I avoided using that expression.
I know. I saw you sort, and then, so your vocabulary is better than mine.
I had to avoid that expression.
All right.
But yeah, it makes a huge difference, and I appreciate your making time to do this.
Thank you.
And I know that the students who are in training to become facilitators and others will enjoy hearing this. Is there any closing remark that you'd like to share with us before we end this recording?
Oh, I wish I had. And that's funny because, they'd always ask Jim Beeren that, and they'd say, well, the professor gets the last word. I really don't, except write your story in, whatever way you choose to write it, but get it written for everybody, for the facilitators too.
And for those who are new to the program and want to know how to contact you, I'm going to put the
Website?
URL, yeah, on the
Sure.
screen, but you can tell them anyway. The main place to go to get more information is.
It's guidedautobiography.com. It's actually
Okay,
the Beeren Center for Autobiographical Studies. So
okay, but
you're welcome to
the
visit.
URL is going to be guidedautography.com.
Right.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Cheryl. I appreciate you coming on, and it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.